Hi everyone. Can someone confirm that I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sanjana. Okay. uh, so in the chat window, I have attached the quiz which I took the last Wednesday. As I told you, it was an ungraded quiz. So I hope that all of you have attempted the questions honestly. So take a look at the questions and let me know if you want to discuss any particular question. Okay, so one more thing about your upcoming minor exam. So see, since after -1 and till now, we have covered some of the really important concepts in operating system, which is process synchronization and memory management. So your minor 2, it is going to be slightly challenging as compared to your minor 1. So you won't see a lot of questions of simply definition type and defining things. Most of it will be based on understanding. If you understand the concept, you'll be able to answer. If you cram them, then it will be difficult. So in that light, take a look at the questions and let me know if you want to discuss any specific question. So it is for all of you. So even if you do not understand the concept, you let me know the question you want to discuss. If you want me to repeat something which was not clear from the previous lectures, you can always do that. I'm giving you 3 more minutes, and if I don't hear from any of you, then I'll start with a new topic. Make question number 5 and 6. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, so let's take a look at question number 5. Right. So you're given a paging hardware with a TLB. So I hope all of you remember what a TLB. Can someone tell me the full form of TLB?
Translation lookside.
Yes, you're correct. Right, so TLB is translation leukocyte buffer. Okay. Uh, what it is actually, so TLB is nothing but it's a very small portion of your page table corresponding to a particular process which sits in the cache memory. So let's say this is the page table corresponding to a particular process. Please remember that page table is different from the process address space. So let's say this is the process address space, and let's say there are 16 pages. So as we discussed, this table, it will consist of 16 entries, right? And each of the entry will tell where the corresponding page is loaded in the main memory. So TLB is whichever of these pages are being accessed most frequently. You take a few of these pages, so maybe let's say 4 entries from there, and you put those 4 entries of page table in the cache memory. So let's say you have 4 entries of the page table sitting here in the cache memory. Now whenever you have to do an address translation, so what we used to do in paging for address translation, so you had two parts. So one was your page number and second was your offset. So whenever an address is generated, it has these two parts. So first of all, you look at the page number. Corresponding to the page number, you need the frame number. So now instead of directly going to main memory to look at the page table, so you first go to the cache memory, right? If you find this corresponding page there, then you can find the frame number directly from the TLB. If you do not find it from the TLB, then you go to the main memory and fetch the corresponding frame number from there. Once you have the frame number, you can add this frame number with the offset, so it will give you the actual physical memory. Once you have the actual physical memory, you will do one more memory access to get the content at that memory location. So let's say when you add both of these, you got 180. It means that the data which you are looking for, it is present at location 180 in the main memory. So you do one more access. So what we are asked in this question is the effective memory access time. So effective memory access time, you see, it will be the, let me say, average time to calculate or to get the frame number, right, corresponding to the given page number. Once you have this, then again one memory access time, right? So note why we have this memory access time, because once you have the address, you also need to do one more memory access. Now how do we compute both of these? So average time to get the frame number. So to get the frame number, we are going first of all to the TLB and then to the cache. So for TLB, it takes you 10 millisecond, right? And the hit ratio is 0.6. So miss ratio becomes 0.4. And then you have a main memory which takes 80 milliseconds. Right? So average time to get the frame number, how much will it be? So 60% of the time you are finding the corresponding page number in the TLB. So 0.6 times it is 10 milliseconds. Remaining 0.4 times you do not find in the TLB. So as I told you, we still access the TLB, but you do not find it there. So you go to the page table which is sitting in the main memory, and it takes you 80 milliseconds there. So please note that this is only this first part. When you compute this, it turns out to be how much? So it is 36, right? So this first part, it is 42 milliseconds, right? And then you add the memory access time to this. So memory access time is 80, so it comes out to be 122 milliseconds. Any doubts here? Okay. Question number 6. In question number 6, you are given a computer system with 40-bit virtual addressing. So which means that your virtual address is of 40 bits. And you are given a page size of 16 kilobytes. So your page size is 2 to the power 4 into 2 to the power 10 bytes, right, which is 2 to the power 14 bytes, right? And then you are simply using a one level page table per process. So there is just one big page table, that's all. So you are not doing any multi-level paging here. And your each page table entry, it requires 48 bytes. Right. Then what you are asked is the size of the page table. So we discussed that size of the page table, how much will it be? It will be equal to the number of pages into the size of each page table entry. So what we have to simply compute here is the number of pages. So how do we compute the number of pages? So look at this, we have a virtual address of 40 bits. So with a virtual address of 40 bits, we can address 2 raised to the power 40 words, right? If it's a byte addressable memory, so 2 to the power 40 bytes. So this is the size of your entire process, and each page is 2 raised to the power 14 bytes. So how many pages will be there in the entire process divided by 2 raised to the power 14? So it comes out to be 2 to, this is the number of pages, 2 to the power 40 divided by 2 to the power 14 into 48, I'm sorry, it is not bytes, it is bits, into 48 bits. right? I see where the confusion is. So the confusion is only between bits and bytes. So the answer which is asked to you is in terms of megabytes, right? Not megabits. Okay, so how much does it become? 2 to the power 26 into 48 bits. To convert it into megabits, it becomes 2 to the power 20 into 2 to the power 6 into 48 bits. Convert it into bytes, and what you will get? 2 to the power 20 into 2 to the power 6 into 6 bytes, right? So this corresponds to the quantity of mega. So it comes out to be 2 to the power 6 into 6 megabytes. And how much is this? It is 64 into 6, 384 megabytes. I'm sure that you would have solved this. The only confusion, so I won't say a confusion, so you have to be just slightly careful that the page table entry is given to you in bits and the size of the page table is asked in bytes. Okay, anyone, any other question which you want to discuss? Question number 3. Okay. So question number 3 says that you have 8 kilobyte pages. So your page size is 2 to the power 3 into 2 to the power 10 bytes, which is 2 to the power 13 bytes. And you have a 32-bit physical address space. So your physical address, it is 32 bits, which implies that the size of your main memory is 2 raised to the power 32 words. Right? And now each page table entry. Now look at a page table entry. So it has few more things. So based on what we have discussed in class till now, we said that each page table entry, it consists of the corresponding frame number for a given page number, right? So that's why the size of a page table entry is the number of frame bits which is required for address translation. But many a times you have some more entries with a page table. So you are given in a page table entry some more entries. So you are given a valid bit. Can someone tell me why do we use a valid bit? So if you remember, we discussed that there are certain pages in the process which might not be in the use. So if they are not being used by the process, will not map them anywhere in your physical memory, right? So they will in the address translation, you can have in each page table entry you can have a valid bit. So this tells you whether the corresponding page is valid or not. If it is not valid, it simply means that it is not mapped anywhere in your physical address space. So you have one valid bit and then you have one dirty bit and then you have 3 permission bits, right? So all of these bits, they are used for the management of your various pages and frames. So you have one here and then 3 permission bits and the translation. So how many bits will we need for the translation? So these translation bits are those bits which tells you the corresponding frame number for a given page number, right? So it is equal to the number of frame bits. And how do we compute the number of frame bits? So it is log 2 times the number of frames, right? So it becomes log 2. How many frames you have? So we have 2 to the power 32 words or bytes in the main memory, and each frame or each page is 2 to the power 13 bytes, right? So it becomes log 2 of 19, right? So you need 19 translation bits here. These bits will tell you the corresponding frame number. Now what we are asked is okay, the length of the virtual address supported by the system. What else can we compute from here? So this is one page table entry, right? How many page table entry will we have? Are we given the size of the page table? Yes. So you are given the size of the page table. So your total page table is 24 megabytes, right? And each entry in your page table is how many? How much? 24 bits. So this is the total size of your page table. This is one entry. Can you tell me how many entries will be there in the page table? So number of entries you have in the page table will be 24 megabytes divided by 24 bits. Right? If you have to convert this part into bits also, so it will become 2 to the power 20 into 8 bits. Right? So your size of the page table is number of entries in the page table is 2 to the power 20 into 2 to the power 3, which is 2 raised to the power 23. These many entries you have in the page table. And what does the number of entries in the page table tell us? How many pages are there in the process? Because for each page we have one entry. So I have 2 raised to the power 23 pages in your process, and then each page is 2 raised to the power 13 bytes. So what is the size of the process? It is 2 raised to the power 23 into 2 raised to the power 13 bytes. So this becomes 2 raised to the power 36 bytes, right? So if this is the size of the process, how many bits do we need in the virtual address? 36. Okay, Abhinav, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other question? All right. Then we'll go ahead and we'll start with a new topic today. So previously we were discussing the topic of cache, how the cache is organized, but as of now I'm skipping that. So the reason for that is that might as well be covered in your computer architecture course. So that topic is officially not there in the operating system syllabus. So if we have some time remaining at the end of our classes in December, then we will take up the organization of cache. I'm leaving that for now, and I'm moving to a different topic of demand paging. So this is the last topic in your memory management unit. After this, we'll study about your secondary storage and file system. That won't take much time. Okay, so coming to the demand paging, what actually is demand paging? So paging by now all of us know. So we have looked at various ways of managing the memory, contiguous memory allocation, paging, segmentation, paging with segmentation, multi-level paging. So most of your systems today, they manage your memory with the help of multi-level paging. So let's concentrate on the paging part there. So paging, all of us know that you divide a particular process into certain pages, and any page can go and sit in any frame in the main memory, right? So now we have a new term in front of paging, which is demand. So what is demand paging? So there is one thing about which we haven't talked till now. So that is, let's say there are certain processes which are running on your system. Let's say process 1, 2, 3, 4 up to process number 10. Each of these processes will have some virtual address space, which is typically 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes, and then corresponding to that virtual address space, each of the process has its own page table. So also remember, this page table is not global, it is local to each of the process. We talked about inverted page table, that is global, but the normal page tables which we talk about, they are local to a process. So page table for this process will tell you about the pages of all these process, where they are loaded, so on and so forth. So page table for this process will tell you where are all the pages loaded in which frames. Now here, one of the idea why we do so much of management in the operating system is we want to run a number of processes together. So everything which we have studied till now, so CPU utilization, CPU scheduling algorithms, context switching, synchronization, memory management, with everything we are just trying to ensure that you can run multiple processes at the same time. where multiple processes they sit in memory. Now the question is, what do you think decides the degree of multi-programming here? How many processes can you execute at a time? So this is your main memory. It has some size. Let's say the size of the main memory is 4 gigabytes. So how many processes can you run in the main memory? So that depends on the size of the individual processes. So you add this virtual address space corresponding to each process, and definitely you can consider only that portion of the virtual address space which is actually mapped on the main memory. So you can consider only the valid addresses. So if you look at all the valid pages of each of the process, so all these valid pages they will be residing somewhere in your main memory, right? And that will decide how many processes can you run. So as soon as your main memory it gets filled, you can no longer run new processes. Now this poses a problem here. So as we discussed that the virtual address space which are given to the processes are close to 2 gigabytes in many systems. So out of 2 gigabytes, definitely there will be some portion for your stacks and heap which won't be used. So maybe you can still bring it down to 1 gigabyte per process, and let's say even less than that, but still you cannot run a whole lot of processes. So with 1 gigabyte you can just run 4 processes at a time, because only 4 processes will fit in the memory. If you bring it down to zero point 0.5 gigabytes, maybe you can run 8 processes, but no more than that. But if you remember that during the first day of our class, we took a look at how many processes were running, and we saw that there are close to 100 processes running in a system at a time, and it can be much more than that. It can be 200, 300. So how does that happen? So in order to do that, we use this concept of swapping or demand paging. So swapping also might remind you of the medium term scheduler which we have studied in CPU scheduling. Okay. So the idea of the demand paging is whenever you have to run a particular process, you need not bring it completely in the memory. You can just bring some of its pages in the memory. So we have discussed about this 90-10 rule. So 90% of the time, a process is only using 10% of its pages. Other 90% of the pages are used rarely. Most of the times, it is those 10% of the pages which are being used. So why not simply keep those 10% of the pages in the main memory, right? So let's say this is the complete big address space of a process divided into pages, and let's say these are the pages which are being frequently used. So what we'll do, when you put this process in the main memory, you only put all these pages here which are being used frequently, few of the pages here. But then the question is, where will all these remaining pages go? And we have to still store all the pages somewhere. So if you talk about virtual address space, it is called virtual because it doesn't exist in reality. In reality, you only have this physical address space which is your main memory. So after you get this entire virtual address space, you need to keep this somewhere. Previously we were keeping it in the main memory. Now we are saying we'll only keep a small portion of it in the main memory. So where will the remaining portion go? So the remaining portion we make it sit on the secondary storage device, which is the hard disk. So we know that main memory is in a few gigabytes in our system, but we have a whole lot of secondary storage which is in terabytes. So whenever you run a process, you have a few pages sitting in the main memory, and the remaining part of that process it sits on your hard disk. And that part of your hard disk where this entire process sits, that is called the swap space. So you can actually figure out where is the swap space in your different operating systems like Ubuntu and Windows. So Windows has like one file which holds all the information corresponding to the swap space. Ubuntu, I think it creates a new disk partition. So it divides your hard disk is divided into many blocks. So it creates a new partition, and there it keeps all the pages which are swapped. Now, what is the problem with this? So now you see I can run more and more processes because I need not have one process entirely in the memory. So the problem with this approach is, see, we are so let us say what is happening when this process is running, your CPU it is running certain instructions. right? And let's say for an instruction, it gets the address of this location. What the CPU does after that, once you have a virtual address, it goes to the page table, figure out the corresponding frame number, and then it generates the actual address, right? So now first of all, in the implementation of the page table corresponding to each page, we need to keep a track of whether that page is present in the main memory or not. So that you can again do with the help of the valid invalid bit which we were talking about. So all the pages which are currently present in your memory in different frames, they can have a valid bit of 1, and the remaining pages can have a valid bit of 0. Now what happens when you generate an address which is somewhere over here? So you go to the corresponding page entry in the page table and you realize that this page is not there in the main memory. It is not mapped to any particular frame. What do we do at that time? So at that time, you require a page which is currently sitting in your secondary storage. So now you need to go to the secondary storage, fetch that page, add that page to your main memory and update this valid bit to 1, and after that the process can resume. The problem here is, as we have discussed, cache is the fastest, main memory is still fast, but your secondary storage devices, they are slow. So this entire process, it will take time. So whenever it happens that you are accessing a particular page and that page is not there in your page table, in your memory, so you bring that from the hard disk, and doing it is going to take a lot of time. So what do you do during that time? During that time, you put this process on hold in the waiting state, just like when the same thing which we do when a process requires an input output, we put in a blocked or a waiting state. You do the same thing here. So for time being, you hold the execution of this process and you start executing some other process. So the idea is you do a context switch here, and during that time when that other process is executing, you can get the page from the hard disk corresponding to this process and place it in the main memory. Next time when this process gets to run, it will find that corresponding page and the work will be done. So this entire scenario, it is called demand paging, and this thing which we are doing, putting some pages in the hard disk, right, and then bringing back to the main memory, and soon you will realize there might be the conditions where you'll actually take a page from the main memory and put it back in the secondary storage. So this process, it is called swap in and swap out. So it is called swapping of pages. Okay, so what all advantages does this give you? So first of all, it has increased your degree of multi-programming. And again, with the help of this approach, you can do the same thing about which we talk again and again. So let's say you have a 4 GB process, but you have a main memory of only 2 GB. So you can still execute this process. So at a given time, you can actually load 2 GB of this program, right, into the main memory. So whatever pages comprise those 2 GB, you can put them in the main memory, keep executing them, and whenever you require a different page, then you can get it from the secondary storage. Third advantage which it gives us is it speeds up the initialization of the processes. So assume that you have a very big process, let's say something like 16 GB, or let's say a very heavy gaming program. So when you click on that program, so if we were not using demand paging, we will have to wait for this entire process to be loaded in the main memory. So the process would start only after you would have loaded this entire entire process in the main memory. But with demand paging, the process can start as soon as you load only few of the pages in the main memory. So you load few pages of this process in the main memory and you can start executing it. Remaining pages, again, you can bring them back and forth with the help of demand paging. Okay. Now, whenever we come up with any memory management technique, there are certain decisions which we have to make. And in this approach also, there are some decisions we'll have to make. So take a look at this scenario. Let's say that there are 10 processes which you are executing. Corresponding to each of the processes, some part of these processes is present in your main memory. So some of the pages of all these processes are in the main memory. So some pages of P0, some pages of P1, P2, so on and so forth. Some pages of P9 are there in the main memory, right? And the remaining pages of all these processes, they are sitting in the swap space in your hard disk. Now, let's say there is a particular process P5, it is trying to access a page which is currently not there in the main memory. So assume that this main memory is currently full. It is being completely utilized. There is no space in the main memory, and this P5 process, it issues a request for a page. That page is not in the main memory. So you have to bring it from the hard disk. What decision will you have to make then? So let's say this is the page, you want to bring this page from your hard disk to the main memory, but there is no space in the main memory, right? So what do you need to do? You need to evacuate one of the pages. So you'll actually remove one of the pages from the main memory, put that back on the hard disk, and you will bring this new page into the main memory. So you see, demand paging, again, although it is providing you some convenience, it is increasing the degree of multi-programming, but then again it is bring more sophistication in this entire process, right? Okay, so the decision now which we have to make here is, which page do you think we will remove from here? So P5 needs a new page. We are removing one page from the main memory and we are bringing the P5's page. Now the question is, there are certain questions which we need to answer. So this entire thing, when you do not find a page in the main memory, it is called a page fault. When you do not, when your valid bit, it is set as 1 in your, it is set as 0 in your page table, right? And that page is not there. So page fault. So what do you do during the page fault? You do a context switch, start executing some other process, and during that time you bring the corresponding page of this process in the memory. Okay, so now the question is, when a page fault occurs and you are bringing one page from the swap space to the main memory, which page from main memory will you remove? That is the first question. Another question which is important is, how many frames in the main memory do you think you will give to each process? So how many frames per process? Previously, we didn't have all these questions because we were loading all the frames of the process, all the pages of the process in the main memory, right? But now we are not loading the entire process. Then the question is, how much space will you give to each process here? How many pages of each process will you keep here? So both of these are design decisions, and then they again depend on the system programmer, how he wants to implement them. So first of all, broadly answering this question, which page will you remove from the main memory? Now see, P5 has requested for a page which is not there in the main memory. So you can do one thing. So you can either choose to remove any of the pages which actually belongs to P5, right? So you remove one of the pages of P5 from here, put it in the swap space, and bring another page of P5 and put it back here in the main memory. Or another design decision is, you can actually use any of the frames. So why just to remove a frame of P5? You can remove a frame of any particular process. So let's say P1 was sitting here, P5 needs a new page. Maybe P1 is a process with a low priority, or P1 is a very big process. Then what you can do, you can even remove the frame of this P1 from your main memory and then bring the page of P5 back to the main memory. So again, these are design decisions. So in most of the implementations, we assume that number of frames per process is fixed. I'm sorry. So we assume that whenever you remove, you actually remove a page from the same process. I'm still yet to talk about the number of frames per process. Okay. Now, how do you decide how many frames per process should there be? So one idea is to simply fixate on a number. So you can say, okay, I'll give 5 frames per process. I'll give 6 frames per process. But what is the problem with that? So for each of the process, you give the same number of frames. Do you see any problem with that? So let's say there are 100 frames available in your main memory, right? Assume that the remaining frames you are using it for operating system related work, right? And let us say there are 5 processes which want to run in your system. So what you can do, maybe you can just simply give 20 frames per process. So for each of the process, I'll load their 20 frames in the main memory. That's it. What is the problem with this? So we are not taking in account the size of the each process here. What if your process number 1, it only has 2 pages. So if it has 2 pages, it needs only 2 frames, right? It doesn't require 20 frames. So the idea is this number of frames which you are giving per process, it should somehow depend on the size of the process. So let us say given a process pi, so let's say si is the size of the process pi, right? And let us say there are many processes which want to execute. So let us say the total size of all these processes is s. So let's say I ranges from 1 to n. There are n processes running in the system. Si is the size of the pi process. Total this capital S here is the combined size of all the processes, and let us say m is the total number of frames in your main memory, right? So how many frames can you allocate for each process in the same proportion of their size? So to pi you can allocate si divided by capital S into m frames. So m is the total number of frames. This is the relative size of your process I. So taking an example here, let's say there are 64 frames in your main memory. Let's say there are only 2 processes. So n is 2, s1 is 10, s2 is 127. So how many frames will you give to S1, P1 relative to its size, right? So out of total size of 137, P1 is having the size of 10. So 10 by 137 into 62. Similarly, how many frames will you give to P2? 127 by 137 into 62. So again, since P2 is larger, it should have a higher number of frames, right? So it will roughly be equal to 4 and this will roughly be equal to 57. So that's how you can decide how many frames does each process get. Any doubts still here? All right. Now let us discuss further. So let us say we are implementing this demand paging and we have made some design decisions. According to these design decisions, let's say there is a process pi and I have allocated 3 frames to this process. So at any given time, this process pi, it can have 3 frames in the main memory. Also, whenever there is a page fault corresponding to pi, I am assuming that if there is a page fault and I have to remove a frame from the memory, the frame should correspond to pi only. So I am not going to remove the frame of some other process. So see, because then you'll have to do some additional bookkeeping. If you can remove the frame of any other process, the system will become all the more haywire. So whenever one process it suffers from a page fault, it will start taking the frames of some other process. So some more management is required there. So to keep it simple, we assume that whenever there is a page fault corresponding to pi, you remove one of the frames of pi from the memory and you load another frame from the hard disk. Now the question again is, which should be that frame of pi which you should remove? So let us say there are 3 frames of pi currently loaded, f0, f1, f2 in the main memory, right? Or you can say p0, p1, p2. So page number 0 is, let me write p0, p1, p2. So this is your entire big main memory. You have 3 frames corresponding to pi, and definitely all of these can sit in different spaces, although I have made it contiguous. So let's say first frame for this pi is sitting here, first page, and let's say this is the second page of pi, and This is the third page of PI. And now let's say when PI is executing, you get an address which corresponds to the page number 3. Right? Page number 3 is currently not there in the main memory corresponding to your process PI. Now the question is, to bring P3 in the main memory, you will have to remove one of these, either P0, P1 or P2. So the question is, which one will you remove? Any ideas? So one idea is to simply remove any page. Who cares? So I'll just maybe roll a dice or toss a coin, or maybe I'll like write a random number generator from which will generate a random number, either 0, 1 or 2, and I'll remove that particular page and bring P3 in. So what can be the problem with that approach? So which page do you think we should remove? Okay. So see, if you simply remove any page, right, it can make the things difficult. Why? So let us say these instructions in PI, they are executing, and each instruction is requiring some data which is at a particular address inside a particular page. So let's say PI, this process first required P0, then it required P1, then it again required P0, P1, then it required P2, right? And then let's say it is requiring P0 all the times. So P0 is like the most frequently used page in this process. And now when you need a P3, let's say P3 comes once in a while here, right? And you remove P0. So there is going to be a problem. So this process, it is using P0 so frequently, so better you don't remove P0, right? So any page which is sort of being accessed frequently, you should not remove that, because if you remove that, you see in the near future you'll have to again bring it back, leading to one more page fault. So that will increase the number of page faults in your system. And with each page fault, there is a context switch and there is a hard disk access which will further slow down your system. So now there are different kind of algorithms to make this design decision. So which particular frame should we remove from the memory whenever a page fault occurs? So let us look at a few approaches here. So what you are generally given in this kind of situation is a reference string. So reference string tells you which particular pages is the process going to use. So let's say first address which was generated, it required page number 7, second address required page number 0, third address required page number 1. Let's take some more here. So this is the stream of pages required by this particular process during its execution, and definitely you won't know it beforehand. Now, let's say you have given 3 frames to this particular process in the main memory. So what we do, initially all of these frames are empty. These frames belong to this given process, let's say process P0. So process P0, it has these 3 frames in the main memory. Currently you leave them empty, and so what will happen in the page table, all your valid bits will be 0, because currently none of the page is in your main memory. Whenever you have to access a page, you see whether that page is there in the main memory. If it is there, well and good, you get your address. If it is not there in the main memory, then there is a page fault and you bring that page there. So what will happen here? So first of all, you need page number 7. So currently none of the pages in the memory, right? So there will be a page fault and you bring this 7 in the main memory. Then there is an address which requires page number 0. 0 is also not there in the memory, so you bring it in the memory. Then you have a third page 1, bring it in the memory. Now you have another page 2 coming up. Now this page number 2, it is not there in your memory, so you need to remove one of the previous pages. So one idea is, we said you just remove any of the pages, but then we realized that that's not a good idea, right? So one of the ideas which we can use is similar to your scheduling, first come first service, first in first out. So whichever page came first, you remove that particular page. So now look at it, which page came first? So first 7 came, then 0 came, then 1 came. So 7 came first. Now when 2 wants to come in the main memory, you will actually remove this 7, right? And you will have page number 2 here, right? So here also you had a page fault and 2 comes and sits in the main memory. Next time process requires page number 0, it is already there. Next time process requires page number 3, right? So which page will you remove now? 2, 0 or 1? So whichever is the oldest, right? Which is the oldest here? 0 is the oldest, right? So you remove 0 and you put 3 here. So you got a page fault for 3. Next you require a 0. Now you see we had removed 0. Right? It would have been great if we wouldn't have removed that. We would have used some other policy. But anyways, we had already removed 0. So we need to bring 0 back. And now which one should we remove? Again, whichever is the oldest. Which is the oldest now? 1 is the oldest. Right? So you remove 1 and you bring 0. Right? So a page fault here again. Next comes 4. So 4 is again not there. So again you need to remove the oldest page. Now the oldest page is 2. So you keep 4 here. It becomes 430. 1 page fault here. Now you need 2. Again we just now remove 2 and 2 is coming back. So you should be able to see the problem with this approach. Right? So 2 now needs to come back. Again you remove the oldest one. So which is the oldest one? 3. So you keep going on in the same fashion. Right? Every time when you do not find a particular page, here there is a page fault. So all of these were the instances where we had received a page fault. And the idea of any policy here is to minimize the number of page faults. As we can clearly see that FIFO is not that smart. It's not minimizing the number of page faults. So can you now think of a strategy which could minimize the number of page faults? That is the question number 1. And question number 2 is, how do we implement it in practice? Right, so I know what we have to remove, which we have to keep where on a piece of paper, but how do you implement it in your operating system? So we can always have a few more entries with your page table, just like we had a valid invalid bit. So one idea which you can use is corresponding to each page, right, in your page table, you can keep one more thing. You can keep store one more information there, and that information could be the time when the page was brought in the memory. So you could include one timestamp there. That might be one idea. So whenever page 7 there was a page fault and you brought page 7 in the memory, so first of all you updated your page table and you place the corresponding frame number corresponding to this page in your page table. Alongside you could also update one more entry here, which is a timestamp. So timestamp tells you at what time this page came in the memory, right? If you access 7 one more time, still you do not change it. So it is the time at which it came in the memory, right? And what you will do whenever you have a page fault, you look at the timestamps of all the pages in the page table, and whichever has the oldest timestamp, you can remove that. So that is one way you can do it. But again, you see, it is again computationally expensive. Whenever there is a page fault, you are looking at your entire page table to figure out which of the pages has the least timestamp. Is there a better way to do this? So a better way to do this is hidden is in this name of the policy itself, first in, first out. How do you implement a first in, first out kind of a thing in computer science? Can someone tell me, whether with the help of stacks or queues? So you can do it with the help of a queue data structure. So what you can do is, whenever you bring a page in the memory, you add it to a queue. So if you look at this particular case, so first of all you will add 7 to the queue, next comes 0, add it to the queue, comes 1, add it to the queue, Now 2, there is a page fault. Which one should you remove? First in, first out. So 7 came first, so you should remove 7. Right? So you can remove 7 and also remove it from the queue, and now you will bring 2 in the queue. So on and so forth, you can implement this entire thing here with the help of a queue data structure. So it won't require you to take note of timestamps all the while, because also storing timestamp is looking at the timestamp is computationally expensive, and storing the time stamps is space wise expensive. So timestamp you usually store them as a string in your system. So we want to avoid that. Okay. So any idea which other policy can be useful? So first in first out was the one. What other thing can we use? So which page do you think we should remove? So whenever there is a page fault, you remove some page from the memory. Which page should it be? So when will your page faults increase? Your page faults will increase when there is a page fault and you remove this page from the memory, and soon thereafter this page is requested again by your process. That increases the number of page faults, as you saw here, right? At this particular instance you removed 2. It was a bad decision because you kept 2 back in the hard disk, and in the very next timestamp you required 2 again, so you brought it back. So removing this 2 from your main memory, it resulted in one more page fault. So we should try not to remove such pages. So what could be the policy here? What could be the optimal policy here? Okay, so I leave you with this question here. Think about it. We will discuss it in the tomorrow's class. So if you have any query, you can ask me. Those of you who have no queries, you can leave.